Tonight we begin with a quiet story, one that moves gently through forests, curiosity, patience, and kindness. It is the story of Jane Goodall, a child who loved animals, a woman who listened carefully to the natural world, and someone whose work changed how people understand chimpanzees forever. There's no need to hurry through this story. Let it unfold slowly, like the soft light of evening settling over the trees. As you listen, imagine a peaceful forest. Birds are calling in the distance, and a life beginning in simple wonder. Jane Goodall was born in England in 1934, and from the beginning she seemed to notice the world with unusual care. While many children might have rushed through their days, Jane was the kind of child who paused to watch, to wonder. She loved animals deeply. She was fascinated by the small details of life around her. A bird in the garden, an insect on a leaf, a dog resting in the shade. Each of these things held her attention. She wanted to know how animals lived, how they moved, and what they might be thinking in their own quiet way. That deep curiosity was not loud. It was not dramatic. It was gentle, steady, and full of respect. As she grew, that love for the natural world only deepened. She read stories about animals in distant places. She began to dream of a life that would take her beyond the familiar. Even as a young girl, she imagined Africa, wildlife, and the possibility of living among animals rather than only reading about them. It was a dream that might have seemed far away, but Jane carried it carefully. She did not let it fade. Instead, she held onto it like a small light in the evening that would one day help guide her across the world. As the years passed, Jane's dream of Africa grew stronger. She was not searching for fame. She was not searching for excitement. She was searching for understanding. She wanted to be near animals in their own environment, to study them patiently, to study them respectfully, and to learn from what she saw. That desire took shape slowly, the way many important dreams do. It was not rushed. It was not forced. It simply kept returning to her year after year until it became part of who she was. Something is calming about a dream that grows in silence. It gives a person time to prepare, time to learn, time to become ready for the path ahead. Jane read, observed, imagined the world she hoped to enter. She stayed curious. She stayed devoted to what she cared about. And in doing so, she showed one of the quiet truths of life, that some journeys begin long before the first step is taken. A dream held with patience, oneness, begin long before the first step is taken, can become a real destination. When Jane finally had the opportunity to travel to Africa, it must have felt like stepping into a long-awaited chapter of her life. The journey itself was a kind of quiet threshold, moving from the familiar into the unknown. But for Jane, the unknown was not frightening. It was full of possibilities. The forests, the wildlife, the sunlight, the sounds of nature, all of it surrounded her with a sense of life that was both new and deeply alive. She had come to observe, to learn, and to listen. That attitude made all the difference. Jane did not arrive as someone who believed she already knew everything. She came with patience. She came with humility. She understood that the forest would reveal itself only to those who were willing to spend time there, quietly, respectfully. And so she began a new kind of life, one shaped by watching, waiting, and paying attention. In that stillness, her work would begin to grow into something remarkable. The forest where Jane studied chimpanzees was full of gentle movement and a quiet life. Leaves shifted in the breeze. Branches swayed above her. Birds called from high in the trees, and the chimpanzees moved through their world with energy, intelligence, and clear social bonds. Jane spent long hours observing them, sometimes waiting patiently for moments that would only reveal themselves after much time and care. She was not in a hurry. She understood that the forest had its own rhythm, and that real understanding comes to those who are willing to follow it. As she watched, she learned that chimpanzees were not simple creatures acting by instinct alone. They used tools. They cared for one another. They had personalities, habits, and family relationships that were rich and meaningful. These discoveries changed how the world saw them. But just as important as the discoveries themselves was the way Jane made them. She did not force the truth. She let it appear naturally through patience and attention. That is part of what makes her story so peaceful and so powerful. She showed that careful observation is a form of respect, and that respect can lead to deep understanding. Imagine the forest in the early morning with soft light drifting through the trees. Jane sits quietly, notebook in hand, listening to the sounds around her. A chimpanzee appears in the branches, another move below. A small group passes through the leaves, each one connected to the others in ways that only time can reveal. These moments were not loud, but they were profound. They changed science, yes, but they also changed the way people think about the living world, and all of it began with patience. Of course, Jane's path was not always easy. At times, people did not take her as seriously as they should have. She was a young woman working in a field where many expected something different. She had to prove herself through her work, her dedication, and her results. That kind of challenge can be tiring. But Jane met it with steady resolve. She did not let doubt stop her. She continued to return to the forest. She continued to observe. She continued to observe. She continued to learn. There is a quiet strength in that kind of perseverance. It does not need to shout, it simply keeps going. Jane's story reminds us that being underestimated does not define a person. What defines a person is how they respond. She responded with discipline, with kindness, and with unwavering attention. And because she remained faithful to her work, her discoveries carried even more weight. She showed that patience is not weakness. It is a powerful kind of strength, one that can endure and eventually transform understanding. As the years passed, Jane's observations began to reshape how people understood chimpanzees. She saw that they used tools, formed close bonds, and lived in complex communities with clear social relationships. These discoveries were important because they revealed how closely connected chimpanzees are to human life in ways many people had not fully recognized before. Her work opened a new door in science, but it also opened a deeper door in compassion. It encouraged people to see animals not as distant or simple, but as living beings with their own rich inner worlds. There is something very soothing about the way these discoveries came about. They were not sudden, they were earned through time, stillness, and care. Jane did not rush toward conclusions. She let the forest teach her. She let the chimpanzees reveal themselves in their own time. That is a beautiful lesson for any listener, especially in a bedtime story. Real understanding often arrives quietly. It asks for patience. It asks for respect. And when it comes, it can change the way we see the world forever. Jane Goodall's life did not end with discovery. Over time, she became deeply devoted to conservation, education, and the protection of the natural world. She understood that knowledge carries responsibility, Once we see the beauty and intelligence of other living beings, we are called to care for them more thoughtfully. Jane used her voice to inspire people to protect animals, forests, and the environment. Her message was calm, hopeful, and full of trust in what people can do when they choose kindness. This part of her story is especially peaceful because it shows how a life rooted in curiosity can become a life of service. Jane did not simply observe the world, she cared for it. She encouraged others to do the same. And in that way, her work reached far beyond the forest. It touched classrooms, it touched communities, it touched hearts around the world. Her legacy became more than research, it became a call to attention, compassion, and responsibility. Jane Goodall's story is one of patience, kindness, and quiet courage. She began as a child who loved animals and became a woman who changed the way the world understands chimpanzees and the natural world itself. Her life shows us that great change does not always come from speed or force. Sometimes it comes from waiting, watching, and caring deeply enough to notice what others might miss. That is a gentle lesson, but it is also a lasting one. Her legacy continues in the people she inspired to study animals, protect forests, and treat the world with more care. It continues in every child who looks closely at a bird, every student who chooses to listen before speaking, and every person who believes that kindness matters. Jane's life reminds us that a calm and attentive heart can leave a wide ripple across the world, and as the forest grows still and the evening deepens, we can remember her story as a quiet gift, one that teaches us that patience, respect, and care can change everything.